Yeah, so thank you, Marina. And yeah, I'm Scott Libby. I am the owner and founder of Royal River Heat Pumps in Freeport. I started the company 13 years ago after realizing that I'm a terrible employee, so I had no choice but to go out on my own. I started right out of high school doing mostly duct work, but I've been through boilers and rooftop units and furnaces and geothermal and you name it. I've done it. I haven't done much coal or wood stoves, but I do have a couple just quick questions. What were the other 4 sessions that you've already had?
We had Home as an Energy System with Brian Robinson from Evergreen. We had Home Electrification with John Luft. And we had a building science introduction from Colin McCullough last week.
Oh, perfect. So I don't know what you need from me as far as a baseline, if you want me to go right into heat pumps or a little more general overview on heating. How many of you are energy coaches? Okay, so quite a few. And everybody else, they rolled up the sidewalk, so you came here. Great. How are you all with heating systems in general? Oil-fired baseboard, warm air, oil, gas? No? Yeah, so, you know, because heat pumps are a little different. We used to, when we did boilers, whenever you got a quote from 3 boiler people, other than the brand of the boiler, you know, they only make so many sizes. So likely you got a quote for the same size boiler. And they all came in and they wanted to put baseboard under the windows, plus or minus a foot from one another. You know, this one might have 6 feet and the other contractor had 7. But for the most part, you were getting the same thing. And that's been my experience in the trade. You know, when I was bidding a boiler job, I was bidding against another boiler company. And we were all pretty much doing the same thing. They were never, you know, you get 5 quotes today and you have 5 different designs, 5 different sizes, you know, one big multi-zone to do all of them. But when we were doing baseboard, we would put baseboard around the perimeter with the idea that the heat would gently convect up the wall and blanket the infiltration that was coming in through the wall. Heat pumps are a little different because most often we're putting it on the exterior wall and we're blowing the heat into the middle of the space. So we have a lot of air movement, but it's 125 degree air, you know, at the heat pump. You know, by the time it gets in the middle, it's mixed and it's cooled off a bit. So placement is key. Everybody pretty familiar with how a heat pump works? Okay, good. How about air conditioning? Pretty familiar with how that's working? Okay. So with heat pumps, well, let's start with air conditioners. Every air conditioning system has 4 major components: a compressor, a condenser coil, an expansion device. You know, there were different types back in the days. Today they're all electronic. And we had an evaporator coil. So when we take a gas and put it in the compressor, we're literally compressing the gas, which it has no choice but to leave the compressor much hotter than when it went in because it's being compressed. Just the act, that mechanical work that's being done, it's heating up the gas. We send that to the outdoor unit for air conditioning. It's a really hot gas. It's a hot coil. So everybody remembers from high school physics, the laws of thermodynamics. Heat goes from hot to cold, always. So if you have, you know, your hand, we always said 98.6, but through the pandemic, everybody getting their temperature checked, you're not 98.6. You put it on an object that's cold, and the heat moves from your hand to the colder object. That's why when we lose power in the wintertime, we start off with a 70-degree house, and it just, all that heat goes from hot to cold. So we take a hot condenser coil. It could be as hot as 140, 150 degrees. Even when it's 90 degrees out, that's relatively cold compared to that 140-degree coil. So the heat moves from that coil to the outside air. Now we have a cooler gas. It's coming into the house and going into a metering device. So we're literally pinching the refrigerant and forcing it to squeeze its way through. At that point, it just kind of flashes like, kind of like if you picture like a spray bottle. You're squeezing, you got water, and you're just squeezing it. It's coming out as a mist. Now that is a lower pressure, again from high school physics. Now at the age 59 years old tomorrow, so 45 years ago, if I had it to do over again, I would pay much more attention in physics class. Because everything about heat pumps is physics. So Boyle's law says, you're shaking your head, you got it? It's the temperature-pressure relationship of gases in a sealed vessel. So if you take, what do we have? We have like a propane bottle that we use on our grill. You can take that and turn it on, you'll have gas coming out. If you take it and leave it in the sun for a long time, it's going to come out much faster. Anybody have one of those weed-burning torches? You hook one of those onto a propane bottle, you're pulling the gas out so fast, the pressure's dropping, you end up getting frost on the outside of that tank because we've lowered the pressure, we've lowered the temperature. So we take that refrigerant and go through a metering device. We immediately drop the pressure. It immediately gets cold. So now we have a cold coil indoors. The room's 80. The coil's 40. So heat, again, moving from hot to cold, gets absorbed by that cold coil, cools the air. We have air conditioning. Pretty simple. Everybody follow that? So we have 3 distinct loops. A lot of people think when we're going to put those wall units up on the wall, we're going to cut a hole through the wall that size. Thank you for that. So that piping, there's one bigger pipe, the little copper pipes. There's one smaller one, one bigger, slightly bigger one. The small one's the high pressure. The slightly bigger one's the low pressure. So we have 3 distinct loops. We have the air outdoors, out near the house. You know, those heat pumps are always 6 or 8 inches from the wall. There's a fan. It sucks air in the back. And let's stick with air conditioning for a minute. It rejects the heat and blows it out. So there's one loop outdoors. No air has come into the house. We've absorbed the heat and we're transferring it through those pipes. Those pipes go from outdoors to indoors. That's the refrigerant loop. Only refrigerant goes from outdoors to in. Then we have those white things hanging on the wall. Those are taking warm air from the house across the coil, blowing cold air, the same air, in the house. So that's the 3rd loop. So there's never any air that goes from outdoors to indoors. Did that? That's air conditioning. It's going to be the same exact thing in a moment when we go to heat pumps. Did that answer your question, though? Oh,
People always say, well, how do you get the air outside to come into the room?
right.
You know, it doesn't come into the room. It's not air.
It's already there.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah, so that's how an air conditioning system works. We have those same four components: compressor. If it's only air conditioning, like I was doing 25 years ago, a lot of people talk about that outdoor unit. You know, it's the condenser, it's the compressor, they always call it one of those things. In air conditioning, we always called it the condensing unit because in air conditioning, that is the condensing coil out there. That's where we take it from a hot gas to almost down to a liquid. So we condensed it. And in air conditioning, we always call the indoor portion the evaporator coil because that was always the cold coil. That's where we take it from almost a liquid to a gas on the way out. In a heat pump world, we always call it the outdoor unit and the indoor unit. And everybody says, well, does the outdoor unit have to go outside? Well, yes, it does, just because it's an outdoor unit. Never in the basement. I know a contractor that installed 41 of them in different basements. And I told him he couldn't do it, but he said he could. So he froze people's plumbing from heating. Kind of ironic. But they changed it from an air conditioner to a heat pump when they invented the reversing valve. So the reversing valve, or four-way valve, has 4 pipes on it and a little slide valve that's inside that you can't really see. But it reverses the flow of the refrigerant. So instead of sending the hot gas outdoors to reject the heat in the summer and the cold gas inside to absorb the heat from the house, they reversed it. So now we send the hot gas inside. Again, it's 140 degrees. The room, we'll say 68. We're going to dump that heat into the room just by air transfer, heat transfer across the coil. And then we're sending the cold gas outside. Everybody asks, how can it work? How can it absorb heat? Well, if I said I can send gas outdoors that's -10, and I can make the surface of that air conditioner or that heat pump outdoor unit, if I can make the surface of that coil -10 degrees, again, heat goes from hot to cold. It's all relative here. You know, you go outside and you feel cold because you're 98.6, your heat is transferring outdoors. But if I make that coil colder than the temperature outside, you can see how there's always heat, you know, until we get to absolute zero, and we don't need to worry about heating or cooling at that point. But we're able to absorb the heat from, you know, today's heat pumps they can do 100% of their capacity at -13.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure it was working. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So you send the cold outside, right? And it's colder than what the outside is.
Yeah.
So then it warms up. So does that mean that there will be some minimum temperature below which your heat pump won't work? In other words, if it's -20 outside and you're sending out -10, or does somehow the heat pump adjust the temperature of what it's, you know, how cold it can get? Or is it just like a downward bottom limit on that?
There is a bottom limit,
Okay.
but we're not going to see it here. You know,
Okay.
minus 20. I mean, when's the last time we had minus 20 in Rockport?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And wind chill does not play into it. Wind chill plays into nothing that we do in housing. Doesn't play into insulation or infiltration or heat pumps. Wind chill is only the perceived effect on your skin. The temperature is still the same. So when you see the news report and they say it's going to be 0, but it's going to feel like minus 10, you and I feel like minus 10, the heat pump says 0. Yeah, you gotta wait for the microphone.
Sorry. I'm not gonna hit it. So it seems like when it gets really, really cold, you know, you really, really want to have heat. But it seems like then a heat pump might not actually operate to heat up your house. So does that mean you always have to have a backup in case it gets really cold?
No, so let me see if I can bust that myth for you.
Okay.
Because my 1840s farmhouse has not burned fossil fuels in 18 years. So, and we've had no backup. We do have a wood stove in the basement. I primarily put it in for when my kids were racing on skis, and every Friday night the kids wanted to be with Dad in the basement, and we would wax 12 pair of skis. So it was more romanticism at the time, but it was really nice, you know, in a power outage. That's the only time we ever lit the wood stove, other than when we were just down there waxing skis. So you guys did the insulation, weatherization portion. It's critical. The heat pumps that I'm using, I only use Mitsubishi heat pumps, so you know, the numbers I'm going to throw out are specific to that. You know, when you're talking Mitsubishi, Fujitsu, Daikin, LG, Samsung, you may as well be talking Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Subaru. You rotate the tires and change the oil, you're going to get 300,000 miles out of them. The difference in the heat pumps, that's very different than cars, is the installation and the design. You know, there are 12-year warranties, I think, on all of them. That's 4,380 days. That's your 12-year warranty. The most important day is installation day. You know, that's going to make or break your heat pump system, but also the design. So the Mitsubishi heat pumps that we use, they're 100% capacity at minus 13. You know, there are probably parts of the state where you're hitting minus 13, but when we do hit it, it's hours out of the day. I mean, it's hours out of the year. It's not prolonged periods. And when you see the low temperature of the day on the news, you know what time that is? Yeah, 4:30 is what I always say. Where are we at 4:30? In bed. You know, we do have some people that keep their oil boilers or whatever their main heating system is. And if they're really concerned about it, I'll have them, you know, go to Home Depot, buy the cheapest programmable thermostat you can buy, have your heat come on from 4 to 5 a.m. It's the coldest time of day when the heat pumps are working harder. So we heat the house a bit with the oil, which really helps the heat pumps a lot.
So you sort of started to answer my question there. There is a drop in efficiency as the temperature outside drops too.
Yes. Yeah, so we'll touch on that in a couple of minutes. I have that on here. I want to talk about the difference between efficiency and capacity. There's two things that people are always mostly using right, but often not.
I just want a little clarification on when you said 100% capacity at minus 13. What do you mean by 100% capacity? I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a great question. Capacity is the rated capacity of any heating system.
In other words, how much heat you get in.
How
the
many
rate at which you're getting
BTUs
heat
is
in.
that heat pump capable of producing? And I don't know why the AHRI, American Heating Refrigeration Institute, or they're the third-party testers. Most heat pumps are all AHRI rated. There are some that are not. They don't use third-party testing, and I can tell you their data is not correct. But so when you look at a model number, and this is what gets everybody. So I want to back up. Just can I come back to that in just a minute?
Yeah, basically you mean that if you have an 18,000 BTU heat pump, it will produce 18,000 BTUs at minus 13. That's what you mean by 100%?
Let me pause that for one moment, because I'm gonna come right to that. So we added the reversing valve. We turned an air conditioner into a heater. Heat pumps, everybody's like, why do they call it heat pumps? It's actually better than the real name of reverse cycle air conditioner. I guess heat pumps is more sexy, I guess. Well, it's a heat pump. All heat pumps, all mini splits are heat pumps, but not all heat pumps are mini splits. We'll come to that. But when we talk about these split systems, they were primarily used, they were air conditioners. They were in the Asia Pacific, in the Mediterranean, the Bahamas. They were air conditioners. I mean, that's all they were. So when you see a model number, they mostly go by 3,000 BTUs. 6,000 BTUs, 9, 12, 18,000, 24. That is the air conditioning output. Because when they had them, they had all those model numbers. They threw in the reversing valve, and they didn't want to change all the model numbers. So our 6,000 BTU heat pump that I use from Mitsubishi will actually do 11,397 BTUs of heat at 0 degrees. It's almost double on that model. That little model is a beast. The 6s and the 9s are my favorites for the right application. So yes, so that 6,000 BTU unit that does 11,397 BTUs of heat, that will do that all the way down to minus 13. That number of BTUs. The way they rate efficiency, they initially use COP, coefficient of performance. So your electric baseboard heat is a COP of 1. It's 100% efficient. Every unit of electricity you put in, you get 1 unit of heat out. That unit of electricity is expensive. We have heat pumps that are COP of 4 at a given temperature. As it gets colder, that COP goes down. So like you said, with efficiency, I'm still producing the 11,397, but my COP might be 2.5 to 3. So I went from a 4 to 2.5. Still much better than burning oil. They don't use COP as the standard because it changes with temperature. I mean, I can go out and measure COP, come in here, do a little math, go back out, now it's different because the temperature dropped. So they use HSPF, Heating Season Performance Factor. That is a ratio of how many BTUs, how many watts are you putting in versus how many BTUs are you getting out. That never changes. If something is a HSPF of 14, that's what it is. That's what we use to compare the brands. So everybody's on the same baseline. Does that help you? That answer your question? Yeah. Yeah, so like the 18,000 BTU unit does 22,290 at 47 degrees or 0 degrees or minus 13. Exactly. Yep.
Thank you. A question on when you're using the BTUs for the rating, is it BTUs per hour or is it just pure BTUs, or is there a time for that for the unit?
It's always BTUs per hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
So when we look at heat pumps, we have to determine how many BTUs the space needs. When we determine that, we use what they call design day temperatures. You can't use the minus 13, because if I size a heat pump, to cover the house when it's minus 13, I mean, it might be minus 13 for 1 hour in a decade. Well, all of those other hours, I'm completely oversized. And oversizing is most often never good. So we have to figure out, what kind of building envelope do you have? Do you have R11? Do you have R30? Is it sealed up tight? What's our blower door test? What's our air leakage? Do we have thermal bridging? This is a great time of year, by the way, to see thermal bridging. Get up early in the morning before the sun really gets up and hits the roofs, and you can see all the framing on the roof. The other day, we had a really, really light dusting of snow, and the front porches, there's a neighborhood that's fairly new. All the front porches were all white until you got up over the building envelope. There was no snow. It's like, that's so sad. But we have to figure out how many BTUs the space needs. And to do that, we're going to do what they call a manual J. Don't ask me what the J is. But the J figures how much heat is this structure losing. And we're doing that by, assessing the walls and the ceilings and the floors and the attics and the windows. Most of them, just a straight manual J, doesn't account for air leakage. We can add that, if we know the blower door test number, we can add that in. But they give you loose, semi-loose, average, semi-tight, and tight. That's the 5 choices that they give us. So we have to figure out how many BTUs we're going to need at design day temp. In Portland, it's 3 degrees. So whenever any heating system, whenever we're below design day temperature, every heating system, every properly sized heating system is undersized if we're below design day temp. Because we only sized it for, the average or the mean. We didn't really go to the extreme because that's not good. You got another question?
So when you go in to give somebody a quote for a heat pump, do you do a heat load design on the whole? Do you do a heat load design on the space? Do you go into a computer program put in the information that you have, and it spits out a number, and you use that number. When you get that number, do you exceed that number a little bit? I'm curious how you do that.
Yeah, so that's the manual J I was referring to. When I first started doing them, it was in a workbook, by hand, entering all the values, the north, south, east, west walls. They were all different, all individual line items. It was all just math intense. Then we started using a computer program where if I had the proper information, I could do it at my desk. Now we have an iPad that has, we use a LiDAR product. So I can come into this room. If I type in the address, it'll tell me what year the house was built. It extracts from Google. It extracts from Google what year the house was built. It has a database inside that it knows what was code roughly at that date, and it puts in the R values. And we go in, and because it's using GPS, it knows that, that's the south wall, that's the east wall, this is the north wall. I scan the room, and it looks like I'm making a video. But all it's doing is picking up on the doors, the windows, the corners of the room, the corners of the floor, and it builds a three-dimensional model. Now, if I know that they've done no insulation upgrades, we just go with that. But I know if Evergreen was, just there, it's like, they might even have their own blower door number that I can put in. So I can really, and we've compared that to the digital ones, the Elites and the Right Softs, and I've compared it to my old IBR ones that I did by hand, and it's pretty accurate.
But that's not something that we have access to. Are there programs online that you can do heat load calculations? Do you know?
Oh yeah, there are all kinds of things you can use. Now, are you going to be doing? Are you an energy coach?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to do manual J's. Yeah. I wouldn't recommend that you. I would recommend that your contractor do that. When I started this business 13 years ago, one of the first things I purchased was a lifetime program for the entire Right Soft suite. It cost me $4,000. And my distributor was like, Scott, you don't have to do that. We'll do that for you. I said, great. And I can give them your phone number. So when things go wrong, they can just call. He goes, oh, no. I said, I got this then. Right behind you.
So if you do come into the a home that hasn't had any insulation or not much, and they want a heat pump, and you go ahead and you size it, do you also explain to them what their electrical costs might be because of the lack of weatherization? When somebody's installing a heat pump, do they get that information about electrical costs?
From me, they do. I was speaking to Richard, the owner of Evergreen, a couple weeks ago, and he was like, I got to put you on my sales team's commission structure because you sell more insulation than they do. No, he didn't say that, but no. But no, I'm different than most contractors. I'm different than most of my competitors. Efficiency Maine has 750. I've heard up to 800 now. Registered vendors that are qualified to go install a heat pump and submit the rebate paperwork for you. From the day I started the business, we were always like up number 1, 2, or 3. We have since dropped down to we're in the 10 or 11 area. Well, we're not doing any less heat pumps, but we're submitting less rebates.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, let me just finish answering her question. And of the top 20, I'm the only one with an HVAC background. It's horrifying. So, it's people that were selling stoves and refrigerators and electricians. No offense to any electricians. Electricians are going to save the world, with all of this electrification. I wish they weren't doing it through the installation of heat pumps, because they also need to be able to repair the heat pumps that they install. I wish the efficiency main list were, instead of 800, I wish it were like 50 at the most. The top 20 do 80% of the work anyway. So I think there could be better quality throughout the state, if there were a lot less, registered vendors. I'll get to you one moment because you asked a question. Yeah, I was going to come right back to you because we were talking about the rebates. Oh, we were talking about insulation.
Yeah, why did you
Right.
drop on?
Because
Does that mean you're not submitting for rebates? I'm not clear on.
I'm not submitting as many as we used to under the old program because the
And why is
old
that?
program, if we went to your house and did 2 heat pumps, nothing was considered about the boiler, nothing. You could get $1,000 for the first one and $500 for the second at some point. I mean, it changed a lot. But now with the whole home rebate, we get people that call us up and, the reason they called was that room above the garage, which is always colder. It's unheated below, it's unheated all around. The ceiling, half of it is the slope of the roof, so it's not insulated as well. It's the furthest one from the boiler, so it's not 180-degree water. It might be 160, it might be 150 going through the cold garage. That's why they called us. And we go through and we do the whole thing, and then we sit down at the table, and they say, am I going to get a rebate? It's like, well, no, because you only had me here to talk about that room. To get you the rebate, we'll stick with a single zone for that room because it makes sense. We'll do 2 more single zones for the first floor, and then we'll do a tri-zone for the other 3 bedrooms. So you can either spend $8,000 for the room that you called me here for, or we can spend $44,000 so that we can get you a $3,000 rebate. I talk more people out of rebates than I do into it.
Could you then help us understand what requirements they have in order for a person to get a rebate? What are the state requirements for a rebate? You just
Now
said
you're
that
asking
they
a
did
lot
not
from me. I
fulfill
can
those
explain
requirements.
Boyle's Law and all that stuff, but I can't explain efficiency main. Sorry, no kidding. Yeah, let's come back to the rebate questions because I want to stick with the heat pumps. Because I might tell you one thing now and it'll be changed before I leave here. No kidding.
My neighbor, can you hear me all right? My neighbor had oil, and I don't know if he removed it or not, but he had a heat pump installed.
Mm-hmm.
So I know he uses less oil because he told me he does. He didn't quantify how much. But I know when his electric bill arrives because I can hear him scream. How much of an impact does the electric use have? Because I can't find any information on it, no matter where I look. It seems to be, according to him, his world, it's extreme. Yeah. He says electric meter runs all the time, and he's complaining about it constantly. What kind of impact should we expect when we install a heat pump, and we're going to have some savings in oil, but, I don't think the jury's out on how much we save in electricity because the electric rate keeps increasing. At some point, I don't think he's going to survive. I mean, I don't know how to evaluate it, but
With a properly designed heat pump system, you should always save. plain and simple, whether you insulate or not. So getting back to the structure, you know, we talked about you need X number of BTUs when it's at design temperature. Well, as the temperature rises, we don't need all of those BTUs. You know, so everybody's had one of those styrofoam coolers that you took to the beach. You put some drinks in there and some ice, and you go to the beach, and it's a 70-degree day. That styrofoam cooler is totally adequate. I mean, that ice will last all day. It's not 70 anymore. It's, you know, now it's 80. You know, by lunchtime, you're reaching into a bucket of water to get a beer out. Or not a beer, sorry, a seltzer. Because the temperature difference from the inside of the wall to the outside of the wall, back, leaving the cooler for a minute, back to the house, I can air condition a whole first floor with one heat pump. But if I'm trying to heat it, I might need a couple. Because in the winter time, it's 70 degrees in the room. It's minus, 22 out there? Yeah. But that would be a 92-degree temperature difference between the sheetrock and the siding. So thermodynamics, heat goes from hot to cold. So it's leaving. The greater the temperature difference, the faster it moves. So that's why, like, when we lose power and it's 50 degrees, we're all good. Nobody's worried. It could take a day for your house to cool off. We lose power when it's 0, everybody's losing their minds because the house is going to freeze. It cools off pretty quick because the temperature difference is greater. That's why it's so much easier to air condition a house, because now it's 70 inside, and it's, even if it's 95, the temperature difference is only 25 degrees. So we don't need as much air conditioning because the temperature difference isn't as great. You know, that's why insulation, you know, eliminate thermal bridging. If you're going to eliminate thermal bridging, you're miles ahead of any. Yeah. You know, if I put my hand on this steel chair, the heat from my hand is conducting right to the chair because I'm right in contact with it. So you have sheetrock, you have 2x6s, and you have siding. That's thermal bridging. That 2x6 is a bridge for the heat to transfer outside. That's like you've seen the roofs, right? There's frost on the roof. The first thing you see is where every piece of framing is on that roof, especially if it's my 1840s farmhouse. It's like a post and beam x-ray. But if I can do a layer of foam before my siding, now I've separated that bridge. So insulation is key. And if you know a house isn't insulated, we can explain that to them. But the most important thing for me is always, have you done any upgrades? But number 2 is, are you planning any? Because if they're like, oh no, we love the newspaper that the old farmers put in here 200 years ago, you know, and we're not changing anything. You know, and some people that live in those old farmhouses, they don't want to do anything. You know, they're plaster walls. They've taken the time to find somebody that is really good with plaster to keep it original.
Excuse me.
Well, wait. Oh.
Sorry, thank you. Pardon me. So if most people, buy a house and someone else has lived there before and the house might be 50 years old and the new owner doesn't know if anyone did any upgrade to the insulation. So is there any way to deal with that? Because, like I wouldn't know. I bought my house a year ago.
Yep, you can get an energy audit. They'll come down and put a blower door in your door.
That's what you require. You require all of that? I mean, there's no way that you could do it quickly? I mean, it's not a record of that anywhere, or you actually have to do the full blower
No, I mean,
door test?
there are a lot of assumptions that have to be made.
Okay.
Even with an energy audit, at some level, there are assumptions. I mean, I'm a heat pump guy, but I consider myself a building scientist. I've been studying building science for 25 years now. I just presented Tuesday and Wednesday at the U.S. Heat Pump Summit. Part of it was on heat pumps, but part of it was on building science. Because I'm kind of a abnormality, I guess. An HVAC guy that cares about building science. Yeah.
So your HSPF for your heat pump is much better than using electric baseboard heat or even oil. It's cheaper. It's cheaper to run a heat pump. So say somebody just says, well, I want a heat pump in my kitchen. I'm there a lot. It's a kitchen living room. I'm in that space. I don't really care about doing my whole house. But I'm going to save money because I'm installing a heat pump. And I'm going to have some air conditioning, which would be nice in the summertime. That's what I think a lot of people are going to be asking for. You must know this, you're an installer, that a lot of customers, that's all they want.
Well, the scenario you just laid out, they're not always going to save money. You might have a 24 by 36 cape or colonial, and the kitchen was an addition. Well, the plumber, God bless him, put some baseboard out there, put the kick space heater in, which isn't big enough to begin with. They put it on a crawl space and didn't insulate it. And they did the sloped roof, and they put skylights in it. It's still controlled by the thermostat that's in the middle of the house. So that room has just plain been cold. That's why they want the heat pump in the kitchen. Well, now you're using the heat pump for something other than saving money. You're using the heat pump to address a problem area, just like I said with that room above the garage. That customer is not going to save money. They're going to increase their comfort. The way to save money is to displace oil. Do I really want to go down the Efficiency Main Road? Efficiency Main's whole house, why don't I take that, because I can probably pass it out when I see the hands come up. No, you don't start talking after you lose the mic.
I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead with that.
Hold it off a little to the side.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
To go ahead with that. So I put heat pumps in a house years ago, and I convinced the woman not to do the whole house with heat pumps because it's extremely expensive to get every little room. And I said, why don't you put some electric baseboard in those rooms? You can turn it down. If no one's in those rooms, they don't have to be 70 degrees like your kitchen you would want your kitchen living space to do. I guess it's
Let
always
me
that,
go into
it's
a
always,
little bit
it's
more.
always that how much do you do? Do you do the whole house? If we're coaching people, I guess we would want to know, are we going to tell people, well, you just can't do one room, or you just can't put a heat pump, in a, are we going to be coaching these people to do the whole house?
Yeah, let me take that from you. But I'll just talk a little. Everybody understands a heat pump now, right? You got the reversing valve, you got the linear expansion valve, and you've got the bridge rectifier. So going into design, and this is where my mind just deep dives. Maybe every time I leave a house, people tell me it was totally different than the other quotes that they got. Efficiency Main's program, you can do a couple different things. You can do the ampli scan, you can do the manual J, determine what the actual heat load is. You can have an energy audit, which will help you dial in on that. And from all of those, you get a number. 37,000 BTUs, 50,000 BTUs, whatever the number is, I can use that number when I submit for the rebate. Or you can use 20 BTUs per square foot, which sounds, I mean, what could go wrong? You got 1,000 square foot ranch. You know, it's that I just came in from the garage. I've got the kitchen, the living room, the bathroom, 1,000 square feet, maybe 3 bedrooms, 20 BTUs per square foot. I need 20,000 BTUs. My 18,000 BTU unit does 21,280. I can put that right here above the door that goes out into the garage. I can heat the living room, kitchen, dining room. It starts down towards the bathroom, which is lovely because that's always the first room, and the bedrooms are cooler. Sounds great. And I can get you a rebate with 1 unit. Your thermostat, you probably only have one. And where is it? Halfway down the hall, right beside the bathroom door. That heat pump is going to blow down the hallway, turn off the thermostat. No heat in the bedrooms. We like to sleep cooler. You know, we want to be 70 in the living room, 63 to 65, everybody, for sleeping. 49 out of 50 people, 63 degrees. It's great. Leave the doors open during the day. It's going to be a little cool in the morning, but I get you a rebate just by going 20 BTUs per square foot. What if that 1,000 square foot ranch is a 1961 Sears and Roebuck kit house? Everybody familiar with them? They were the Go Logic of the day. That 1961 Sears and Roebuck kit house is in Fort Kent. It's never been updated. It has 1.5 inch fiberglass with foil face in the walls. And the attic. I bought one. I was horrified. I mistakenly poked a hole in the sheetrock, and I saw what was there for insulation. I gutted it. Or that, well, we'll use that. That 1961 Sears and Roebuck ranch is my place in Brunswick. After I got horrified, I ripped out every bit of sheetrock, every interior wall, every door, every window. I put, you know, that green plywood, that zip system? I put that on the ceiling. I taped every joint, which made it really nice when I sheetrocked because I didn't have to find the strapping. I just put a screw anywhere. On the outside, I did that as well, but I did with the 1.5 inch foam on it. So I had no thermal bridging. I did R15 Rockwool 2x4 in the walls, and I sealed this up so tight. Before I insulated, I did a blower door test on it. I met code with no insulation, no sheetrock. And I was like, but wait a minute, where's all the air coming from? Like, how am I, like, I was excited I met code. But it's like, but where's the air coming from? And I'm walking around and I'm looking, and I had 5 little plumbing pipes that went up through the walls for the venting. I hadn't sealed around them. And then I noticed I had a 3-inch gap all the way around my chimney. I forgot, because I was going to do the fire stop with the sheet metal and everything. I forgot that I hadn't put that in before my blower door test. So I met code with no insulation and the equivalent of a 32-inch wide window open 8 inches. And I was like, that's sad. If that's our minimum building standard. So I buttoned it all up. I thought we were going to rent it out, and then my daughter moved in. Last January, and then again in February, for an all-electric home, 3 heat pumps, heat pump water heater, heat pump dryer, induction cooktop. Her electric bill was $89 for January, and then again in February. So that first ranch that we talked about was 20 BTUs per square foot. Then we made it a Sears and Roebuck, and we stuck it up in Fort Kent. That probably needs 30 to 35 BTUs per square foot, like to legitimately heat it. But it's going to get a rebate just by using 20. My little house in Brunswick, the total load for first floor and basement was 18,000 BTUs. So it's only 1,000 square foot living space, but I'm heating the basement as well. I insulated the basement walls. So I'm only 10 BTUs per square foot. So with efficiency mains math, it doesn't account for where the house is. It doesn't account for what the insulation values are. The biggest thing it doesn't account for is distribution. This is the thing that I want. This is the biggest moment. So if you're taking notes, take this one. Distribution. Your baseboard heat that I did for you 35 years ago, 180 degree water, it's about 600 BTUs per foot. So if you've got a room that has a 10-foot piece of baseboard, that's 6,000 BTUs of heat. And then I've got 8 feet in that room. I got a little 4-footer near the entryway, another 8-footer there. And we got a kick space heater in the basement, or in the kitchen, not doing anything. 3-footer in the bathroom, 20 BTUs per square foot. The biggest thing I see is the heat pump guy that comes in and says, we can put a 24,000 BTU unit right there. We'll get you a rebate. But yet right here is a set of stairs that goes up to the second floor. When we did the boiler, I put the right amount of heat in every room. Now we're going to do a heat pump, and we're going to put it all on one side of the stairs. Thermodynamics, heat rises. This side of the house is going to be freezing. Maybe not freezing, but not comfortable. So consider distribution.
So then I'm guessing you're advocating for whole house heat pumps, ducted systems whenever possible then?
No. I have a full sheet metal shop. I have 3 tin knockers on staff. We do a lot of duct work. So we talked about the manual J to determine how many BTUs we need for the house. Then we go to manual S. The S makes sense because that's selection, equipment selection. So now I've got my manual J. I know how many BTUs I need. Now I go to S. What is the best equipment to meet that manual J's needs? Once we get into ductwork, now we need to do a manual D. You see how I'm confused on the J? I can't figure out what's the J. But now I need to properly size the ductwork. No matter how well I insulate it, we're going to have heat loss. I'm going to lose 20% no matter what if I do a ducted system. The basement, anywhere. You're going to have friction involved, so the air is going to slow down. It's not going to be delivered the same way. In some applications, ductwork makes sense. Never, ever in the attic above the insulation. Never, ever in the attic above the insulation. All ductwork shall be within the thermal envelope. If you, any readers, you guys are probably all readers, right? Buy the book, No Ducks in the Attic. It's one of my favorites. It's a very thin paperback. It's a very easy and light read. Be nice to me.
Absolutely. I just wanted to address, someone had the question here about cost. I think it was this gentleman in the back. So there is a way that you can guarantee that everybody who puts a heat pump is going to save money. And the way to guarantee it is to make sure they're just as cold and miserable after they put the heat pump in, meaning don't take any of your savings in comfort and never use the air conditioner. If you do that, you're absolutely guaranteed to save money because you will be putting the same number of BTUs in because the temperature will be the same, or you'll be using the same number of BTUs in the space or wasting the same number, but you'll be buying them at a much lower cost because you won't be buying oil or propane. And propane is the most expensive right now.
Thank you. Yeah, so with that manual J, we've determined how many BTUs every structure needs. It's not going to change if it's oil. Oil burns at 100, it's 140,000 BTUs per gallon. It burns at 1,600 degrees if you measure the flame temp. We're heating up the boiler or the furnace to 750 degrees. 550 goes up the attic. The other 200 makes the water 180 so that we can make the room 70. Well, the oil was in the basement. It was already 55 degrees. It was only 15 degrees away from where we wanted it. But we went through this entropy. You know, it's costly. The best return on investment is one heat pump. That ranch with the unit above the door blowing down the hallway, they will realize a return on investment quicker than anybody. The next best one is the house we just described with the stairs up the middle. One heat pump there and one heat pump there. So I'm blowing towards the stairs this side and around the stairs that side. So I can set up a little convection current. But you also have to consider where the thermostats. You know, this house is still only one thermostat. So it's a perfect scenario. We have people that want to put one heat pump in this room, in this living room. You know, it's the L-shaped one. Living room, dining room, kitchen, bathroom down by the garage door, and then that room that, like when we used to use dining rooms, like now it's an office because of the pandemic, they're working from home. The thermostat for the whole first floor is right here in the living room. I'm blowing the heat right at it. That room has no heat. You know, so that's a difficult one. You know, what are they going to do in that room? I don't want to have them spend another $5,000, $6,000, or $7,000 for another heat pump. I'm going to tell them, use the heat pump as much as you can until that room gets cold, and then go back to the oil. I mean, I'd love to see them not burn oil, but, sometimes it's best.
I'd like you to please explain, or I want to basically challenge you on why it's inappropriate to insulate ducting above the insulation in the attic space. If it's thickly insulated, why can't that ducting be there and work?
Yep. So I'll answer that after you read the book. No kidding. What are you doing? R60 in the attic? So you have just a ballpark, 24 by 36. So what's that? 144, 3, 9, 876 square feet. R60. 3,500, 4,000 with air sealing. We'll say 5,000 because you got to pull out all the fiberglass, vacuum it all up, air seal, and now you got this beautiful layer of blown-in cellulose. It's R60. And then I'm going to come along, and I'm going to take sheet metal up from, I'm definitely not putting my equipment in the attic. So we'll say I caved and I compromised. I put an air handler in the basement, and we got a nice little chase that goes up to the attic. I run my little spider of ductwork to get the 4 bedrooms and the 2 bathrooms. My insulation is only R8. That's the best we're doing. 3 inches with a foil face. Properly installed is R8. Properly installed means, pi r squared. I got to cut a piece of duct wrap like 42 inches long, and I need to wrap it around, fold over the seams, staple it, tape it, seal it. All my ductwork has to be sealed. Properly installed is R8. Real life, it's probably closer to R5 because people squeeze it and they staple it, or they don't staple it and they just tape it. There's big gaps. That's all fine when the air is moving at 700 feet per minute up through that chase, out through that ductwork, goes out through the grill at 400 feet per minute, goes into the room. Everything's not too bad. I'm going to lose my 20% capacity, but then the thermostat shuts off because what's upstairs? Bedrooms. What temperature do we want them? Thermostat shuts off. Now all my air stops moving. Well, now I have those grills in the ceiling. They're not delivering air into the room, heat. They're whole. So they just did R60, and I cut an 8-inch round hole in it, and your effective R value in your whole second floor is now R8. You could have saved the $5,000 and put it towards your electric bill. Even worse, I don't want to go into dew point. We'll go into psychrometrics on the next one. In the wintertime, it's 20 degrees above your insulation. 20, 25? Right. So we'll put the duct where the sun doesn't shine. So it's 20 degrees in the attic. It's 70 in the room. 63, I'm sorry. But in this room, it's 70 because you just showered and the kids just showered. So now we got a bathroom that the door was closed. the bathroom exhaust fan probably goes out and dumps into the soffit, and all of that moisture is probably coming right back up in. But now we have 2 very humid rooms that are 70 degrees that are going up through that 8-inch hole that I made. The dew point is the temperature at which moisture vapor will condense on a surface. The ductwork's made of sheet metal. Now it's cold because it's sitting in a 20-degree attic. Now all of that moisture from the bathrooms goes up and it condenses. Now I have water. You would not believe how many moldy filters I have seen in my life. The air quality is horrible. And that's one of the biggest things we need to do as we tighten up homes, is think about indoor air quality. Can you not put ducts in attics now? Please? Okay. Did I do it? No, kidding.
You teed up a question for me on mold. The head units inside the house tend to get kind of sporty in the summer, especially if you're down near the water. And they are a royal pain to clean. I kind of wonder, in finding someone to clean it or doing it yourself, it's about equally difficult. So your comment on that, because they do get moldy.
Yeah, I'd like you to clean the filters yourself, but hire somebody to do it. Who installed them? I don't need a name, but do they do cleanings? Yeah. So Chuck in a truck and Dan in a van. Right. I mean, you can call weak clean heat pumps. Chances are it's not mold. If you had it tested, it's probably not mold. When you run your heat pumps and air conditioning, after you're done using them for air conditioning, as much of a pain as this sounds like, you should just switch it over to fan for a half hour, 45 minutes, and dry out that coil, dry out any moisture that's still there. But often that black stuff that you see running down, the little spots, oftentimes that's just dust. You know, we all have dust in the air. And if you've been running air conditioning and my air coming out is 52 and I'm blowing on a plastic louver, the dew point of that is 64, you know, so any, yeah. I'd have it tested because it's probably not mold, you know, just to put your mind at ease.
One of the scenarios we've been thinking about for coaches is people who have had a couple of heat pump quotes already, and they're very apples to oranges, and people are sitting and saying the BTU is different, the brand is different, the position is different. How do I make sense of this? So if you were to kind of walk in, say you didn't have the opportunity, you weren't going to bid on it yourself, you're just helping people kind of deal with apples to oranges quotes, what are the things you would look at and how would you help them decide or ask questions?
No, that's awesome. I just sold a job 2 weeks ago. Whole house system, big house. It was a $54,000 quote. You know, we went in and we scanned it. We were there for 2 hours. We scanned it. We did the whole manual J right on site. We did the manual S. We were in the attic. They asked why I needed to go in the attic, and I said, because I need to go in the attic to see the insulation. Well, the other guys didn't go in the attic. My quote was $54,000. The next quote was $11,000 less than me, so 43. The other one was $16,000 less than me, so 38,000. This is for 2 doctors. They kept emailing me, and Megan in my office goes, if she already told you you're $16,000 high, why is she emailing? I go, because she wants to work with us. So I said, I asked the woman to send me the other scopes of work, not the quote. I didn't want, she already told me the numbers anyway, but like I didn't want the name of the company. Just because I wanted it to be apples to apples, and they weren't even fruits. I mean, one was a fruit, one was a vegetable. And I explained the differences on all of them to her. And then she emailed back, oh my gosh, Scott, thank you for, and I wrote a long email. She was like, thank you for doing that. I'm sorry to bother you, but it's just a lot of money to spend. And I said, yeah, no, and you really only want to do it once. So it's difficult. It's ask for the manual J, ask for the manual S. If there's ductwork involved, you need the manual D. Get referrals. Word of mouth, friends and family, they're not going to lie to you. The online reviews, you don't know if they paid for them or if they wrote them themselves. It's the wild, wild west at some point. Before I give you that, I'm in no hurry, so I don't want to just keep going, because is this okay with no PowerPoint?
The question came up about maintenance on the heat pumps, and I wondered, we know as coaches that installers may or may not give a lot of guidance to homeowners in the systems, and where would you direct people for the best guidance on cleaning and maintaining their systems? Like, where online can they get good guidance for that if they haven't gotten it from their installers?
Quality differences in any of these? So we give this packet to our installers in the morning. So before they go, they already got a packet similar to this from when I was there, or Shane or Travis. We give a lot of information during our first visit, but then we give this to the installers, and it has the warranty, the rebate information, the user guides, Efficiency Main's user tips that she has there. Another one, we kind of did our own. So we give a lot of information, which, preventative maintenance, all of that information. That's one thing to ask, like, do you do preventative maintenance? Electrical permits. Make sure your contractor is pulling a permit. More and more and more heat pumps are getting put into homes that have a 100-amp service. I've seen some that have a 60-amp service. Most homes that are electrifying are likely going to have to upgrade to 200-amp. If they're fortunate enough to have natural gas, maybe they have a gas stove and a gas dryer and a gas water heater. There are still a lot of homes that can do heat pumps with a 100-amp service. But more and more and more, all of the local jurisdictions are asking for the load calculation on the electric panel. You know, all of your breakers are designed to protect what? The wire. A lot of people think it's designed to protect the heat pump or the dryer or the range. That'll just fail, and that can be replaced. But the wire is run all through the walls in your home. Breakers are designed to protect the wire from overheating and starting a fire. Make sure they're going to register the warranty for you, the contractor. You know, I've asked Efficiency Maine to put the local jurisdiction permit number on the rebate form. They won't do it. I've asked to add, you know, if I go to your house and I register your warranty, I get this emailed back to me, just a little certificate saying 12-year warranty. If I don't register your heat pump within 90 days, your 12-year warranty is now 5. Why wouldn't we put this on the Efficiency Maine rebate form? You know, we're trying to have people save money. So they should register their warranty. They should do preventative maintenance. They should know how to repair them. I had a manufacturer ask me if I would take on repairs for all of southern Maine. And I was like, what, and enable my competition? Now we're just straight up telling my competition they don't have to know how to fix it. Just go throw it in and call me when it doesn't work. I was like, no, I don't want to meet angry customers. I want to meet happy customers, and I want to keep them happy.
So as coaches, like, have you got like 5 things that you would, we're talking to people who want to install a heat pump. You got like 5 things, maybe 3 things that would help us, you know, that would help us to coach. What we should do.
Now, as coaches, what do you guys do? Are you soliciting bids from contractors? You're not sizing and selecting equipment, but you're trying to help them interpret the quotes that they've already received. Oh, sorry, I'm standing there watching you. I'm like, I can't even.
2 things. It could be talking to them before they go talk to contractors about any information, questions they have about heat pumps to get them ready for a contractor and questions to ask a contractor, and then helping them on the other side interpret. So those would be the 2 scenarios in a nutshell.
Yeah, I would, one thing that I would do is, you know, go to the Efficiency Maine website, try to stick within the top 20 or 25. You know, if you're going to go below the 25, the first 25 people on the list, you really want to look and see, like, who is that company? Because, I mean, there are some good companies below that. They might just be, you know, a company that focuses on oil and gas. They do a lot of air conditioning and central air and things like that. They just don't process a lot of rebates. But you really want somebody that, you know, I would love to say someone that has a background in HVAC, but even some of these guys that were selling appliances have now been doing heat pumps long enough where they'll do a good job. But I would stick with the ones that are nearer to the top of the list. You know, I think it'd be great if you guys could, you know, help select, like, where are we putting equipment? You know, please don't put it on each side of the front door, out front. The outdoor units, yeah. The line set ducting, it comes in 4 colors, white, ivory, gray, and brown. It doesn't all have to be white. You know, it shouldn't be in the shape of a cross or a swastika on the side of the house. Try to keep it straight and neat. But, you know, ultimately you want to put the outdoor units like on the gable end, where it's not going to get stuff shedding off the roof. If it's a metal roof, don't put it on the eaves, unless you plan on building a significant structure over it, you know, to protect it. Even worse is the house that has the 2-foot strip of aluminum along the bottom. Don't go under there, because that they should have called Evergreen to get the insulation fixed, but instead they just put a little belt of sheet metal to keep the ice dams falling off the roof. But I think, you know, proper placement, as much as you can, are you doing energy audits as part of coaching? Is that a requirement for any of the assistants that anybody will get?
It's not a requirement, so it will be the homeowner's decision as to whether they want to do that or whether they know that they're going to need weatherization and want to put their limited resources toward that. There's also an issue of there not being that many auditors, and so, you know, it will be up to each client to make that decision.
Yeah, because as much as you can, you want to have a. Oh, I think we took it right from her.
Sorry.
As much as you can, you want to develop some sort of a specification guide. You know, maybe you don't have to dig right into sizing, but have the client, you know, if you're going to get multiple quotes, make sure they're all single zones and that, you know, the outdoor units are going to be here and the indoor units are going to be here. You know, it gets very confusing when you have somebody like me that wants to come in and do, you know, 2 single zones on the first floor and the one above the finished garage and a small multi-zone for the 3 bedrooms. Or somebody else is going to come in and want to do 6 single zones. Or the next guy is going to want to come in and do that big double fan unit with the branch box. Those are horrible, by the way. Like, don't do them. The big ones with the double fans outside, they're great for, you know, a church sanctuary where the big units are in one big room, but not in small rooms. But as much as you can, kind of steer towards when somebody comes, this is the quote we're looking for. You know, and maybe even ask them, like, how do you feel about that? You know. Well, don't let all the quotes be so wildly different that you can't make heads or tails.
You can't control it.
Right.
Can I, 2 things I wanted to ask. Could you explain the difference between a mini split and a heat pump? And this is experience from Cape Cod. We had a mini split and the unit was outside and covered and stopped working. And they said it was insects in the motherboard that cost hundreds of dollars to replace that we had to pay for. But so there were, I think, moths and there were just insects that had gotten into it and stopped working. So
I haven't had insects ever. I've had rodents, but so a heat pump is what we just described. It has an outdoor unit and an indoor unit. A mini split is a heat pump, but the indoor pieces are mini compared to, you know, the ones that we used to do 25 years ago. there was a big outdoor unit, and we had a big piece of equipment that looked more like a furnace that used ductwork just like this. So those are also splits because you have part indoors and part outdoors. A mini split is just small, ductless. Yep. Should have brought your own mic. No, kidding.
No, no, in the context of heat pumps, talk a little bit about heat pump hot water heaters and your thoughts on those, and on a couple of them, just general thoughts, and also the thought of venting them.
Oh, venting heat pump water heaters? Yeah, so heat pump water heaters, they have the compressor, and you know, you've got the fan and the coil you see, that's the evaporator. The condenser, the hot coil that we would normally have up on the wall for heating, is just simply the piping inserted into the water. So we're taking heat from the basement and transferring it to the water. They're fantastic. You have to have a room that's a minimum of 800 cubic feet. So that's 10 by 10 by 8 foot tall. Minimum room size, 800 cubic feet. Because the room will just continue to get colder. And the colder the room gets, the less efficient the unit will be. And if it gets too cold, there's a cutoff point where it just won't work anymore. It's not the same technology that we have that'll work down to minus 22. You don't want your basement minus 22. And as far as venting them, some manufacturers will allow it, some won't. They do not vent to the outdoors. They just vent to a different part of the basement. You don't want to, you would be taking air from your basement. Basically, you'd have an exhaust fan that ran all the time with an 8-inch round duct. So you would be taking air that you paid to heat, dumping it outdoors. Venting is not a great idea. If you get into a situation where the room is not big enough for a heat pump water heater, that you have to vent it, in some cases it can work. But in most cases, it's like, I've often told people, like, buy the Rheem Marathon electric water heater. It's super insulated. It's an electric water heater, but if you're in a regular basement, I mean, my basement is this big, you know, half of this space. And it's a basement. There's no finished space. My basement might be 3 degrees lower because of the water heater. However, you could put a heat pump down there because a heat pump is more efficient at making heat than the heat pump water heater is at using it. So you'll come out with a net positive as far as energy usage, but you'd spend $7,000. Right.
Heat pump water heater for quite a while, and this year I just decided for the winter to just use it electric. Just switch it to all electric. That way I'm not cooling my basement.
Is that making it too cold?
Well, when it was on heat pump, it was making it cold. Really, it's an unfinished basement also, but the laundry is there. It's just uncomfortable.
Right. You know, and that's the key thing with everything. If I'm doing my job properly, you call me up, I come to your house, I give you an estimate, you give me thousands of dollars, and you never think about your heating system again. Because the only time we think about our heating system is if we're not comfortable. So I've always been trained, Scott, go work 40, 50, 60 hours a week so that nobody can think about what you did. So yeah, if you're not comfortable, do what makes you comfortable. And one of the most important things, forget the number on the thermostat. We've all been trained. Honeywell, Jimmy Carter gave us the programmable thermostat through Honeywell. He didn't do it himself, but, and Honeywell had it nailed. Wake, work, home, sleep. We turn it up in the morning. We turn it down when we go to work. We turn it up when we get home. We turn it down when we go to bed. Why'd we do that? Not to put our bodies through wild temperature swings. We did that to save money. Because the only way to save money is to vary something. Something has to change. Well, that oil, it burns at 1,600 degrees. It makes 180-degree water. It ain't changing. So the only thing we could change was the room temperature itself. So we got 4 chances to make 4 very uneducated choices on, you guys have all heard, this half of the room, set it back, program it, and this half is like, no, because you're going to waste all your money bringing it back up to temperature. Well, if it's 40 degrees out, you guys might be wrong. But if we're 0 degrees out, you guys are definitely wrong. A heating system is designed to heat your home to 70 when it's 0, not bring it from 55 or 60 or whatever crazy number you came up with back up to 70 when it was 0. So that's why the set it and forget it things with heat pumps is so important, because they're inverter driven. We take the 240 volt AC power from your panel, we wire it into the outdoor unit. The first thing it does is go into a bridge diode, a rectifier. It creates a simulated DC voltage, which is completely, infinitely variable. We got little sensors in the units, in the outdoor units, in the room. Every 3 seconds they talk, and it says, okay, they want it 70. It's 68 or 69. This is easy. It's 40 degrees out, and they're all talking. And it decides how fast to run the compressor, how fast to run the indoor and outdoor fans, and they achieve that savings because now we can vary the speed. We don't have to vary the room temp. It's like, we're probably all backwards here. We're probably all either driving EVs or hybrids, right? But back in the days before that, when you went to the car dealership and you looked at the EPA miles per gallon, where'd we get better gas mileage, city or highway? Because we were just cruising. That's set it and forget it with a heat pump. The on-off with the thermostat, that's, let's go 60 miles an hour to the stop sign, stop. 60 miles an hour, stop. So we're start and stop, start, stop. We're much better off to just put it on cruise control.
So I want to summarize that. So if we are working with somebody that doesn't have heat pumps, just, oil heat, is it more efficient for them to keep it at a 60 something, or turn it down during the day, turn it up when they're active in their home?
With an oil heating system? It depends on the outdoor temperature.
Okay.
If it's 0, set it and forget it.
Okay.
Because we don't want to bring it back. I equate it to riding a bicycle.
I had another question after that.
I equate it to riding a bicycle. We're right here driving down this nice flat street. I'm going 10 miles an hour, 13 miles an hour, and a car pulls out of the driveway. I got to slow down. No big deal. I can get back up to speed. It's flat. You know, that's like if it's 50 degrees out. I can go from 50 back up to 70, or not 50. 50 is extreme. You know, maybe you set it back up to 10 degrees because it's 50. I can get back up to temperature pretty quickly. If I'm going up, you know, not a terrible hill, that might be like if it's 20 degrees. That car pulls out in front of me, and I got to slow down or stop. Now I'm going to like feel the burn in my thighs, trying to get back up to speed.
Okay,
You know, so maybe I only set it back 5 degrees.
cool. So the variance and fluctuation
Yeah.
is contingent on the weather outside.
You know, you're going up a big hill, you know, Mount Washington. Car pulls out, I'm getting off and walking.
Thank you. And my other question is, when we are talking to folks and they hear all these magical things about heat pumps, I definitely want a heat pump, and then they get a quote and it's a lot of money. And is it advisable to like install piecemeal as you can afford, or wait until you can afford the whole system at once?
I love that. Yeah, so every time you get that number that's way higher than you thought it was, call Efficiency Maine and ask them why they're saying they're $2,500. Oh, no kidding. No. You know, the Inflation Reduction Act that was put into place under Biden, it was a 10-year program. You could get a $2,000 rebate in 2020. You could get another $2,000 rebate in 2021, another one in 2022. You could do an electric panel upgrade. You could phase your whole energy improvement system to your house over 10 years. Efficiency Maine modeled the types of equipment that would be rebated. They modeled that after the Inflation Reduction Act, but they want it all at once. That they missed the phasing part. If I do one heat pump now, we'll say we need to do 2 to get you a rebate. I do one now, the other one has to be completed within 6 months to get the rebate. Rebate aside, phasing a project is no problem at all. You know, we picked the one in the living space because that one thermostat for your oil system on the first floor, that accounts for about 70% of all your oil usage. So if I can use a heat pump and eliminate 80% of that, we're on the road to savings. So that's always the place where I go first. Oh, sorry.
So back to the ducted versus mini split. Can you give us the quick, like, why one, why the other, what's benefits, drawbacks, et cetera?
So mini split is like calling it an adhesive strip a Band-Aid. So just take mini split out of the equation. Not even a word. You have ductless and ducted. Ductless is the one, well, within the ductless, you have the wall unit that you always see high up on the wall. Everybody seen the floor units? So the floor unit, so this is all the stuff that I do when I'm at the house. I keep pulling stuff out of my bag and nobody can believe I have a folding wooden ruler. But the floor unit, can everybody see that? It's 24 inches tall, 8 inches deep. So that's the side profile. And it's like 30 inches long. Works just like a wall unit when necessary. They're more expensive. you know, every room, every house we go in, it's like this. All the furniture is down here where you guys are. All of this space is open air. I can put a wall unit right there, and I can heat that side of the room. If I put a floor unit right there, you guys are not going to sit there because the heat's blowing right at you, and you guys are going to be cold. So floor units only where there's, I might do less than 5% floor units. You've all seen the ceiling units that everybody wants. Again, only where necessary. So all of those, have you guys all seen the ceiling units? Cut a hole and recess it into the ceiling. There's no ductwork. So those are ductless. The wall units, the floor units, the ceiling units, they're all ductless. Then I go to ducted. That's where the mini split term would go away. They have low static, medium static, and high static. Low static might be good for, you know, the 2 kids' bedrooms with the bathroom, or the primary suite walk-in closet with the bathroom. I might have to go to a high static unit to do the whole first floor. But that's all, you know, the fan's much more robust with a bigger unit. I can do a lot more with it. Does that help? Oh, yeah.
Just decision points as to, oh, here's a new house, new construction, we can do whatever we want. We've got a basement. What do we
Wall
do?
units.
Wall units.
If I had all the units sitting on the floor in my warehouse in cardboard boxes, the wall units are the least expensive. The floor units are next. The ceiling units, just the equipment themselves, is the next in line, but we add about 6 hours labor for those, for each one. So that price goes up. And the ducted ones are even more expensive. You know, people more and more are getting over the aesthetics. I understand with people building a brand new house, they don't want to see things. I always compare myself, I'm just another generation of heating contractor. You know, I can only imagine the homeowners lost their minds when they showed up with those 6-foot-long, 4-foot-tall cast iron radiators. Yeah, we're going to put it right here. Oh, no, I want to put a chair there. But, you know, it's all generational.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is, given your druthers, you'd prefer ductless systems to ducted.
I make way more money doing ducted.
Thank you.
And
Just
I
answered
would,
my question.
I would much prefer to do ductless.
I had a question. What about ground source heat pumps? Can you just describe?
What about those ground source heat pumps,
Yeah,
huh? No.
I mean,
Yeah, so geothermal. So you have, so everything I've been talking about and everything that we do and everything that, you know, everybody's trucks are popping up all over every town is air to air. So we're taking heat from the air and we're transferring it to the air. Ground source or geothermal is water source. So water to air or water to water. So with geothermal, I can either do, you know, the box that has the fan in it and connect all the ductwork to it. So that would be water to air. Or I can do water to water and use it for like radiant heat or maybe some of those really nice European radiators, not for baseboard. Within geothermal, you have open loop and closed loop. So open loop, I'm pulling water from a well over this side of the house, and I'm dumping it back into the ground over this side. Closed loop, it's literally a closed loop of pipe that goes down in one well. The water circulates. Efficiency-wise, the open loop is more efficient, but much less reliable, because somebody might come along and you didn't expect for a 20-lot housing development to go in beside you, and now all of a sudden the groundwater has changed. Will you guys be doing? Are you a coach? Okay. I just didn't know if you were going to be coaching. You guys won't be coaching anybody on geothermal. Oh, sorry. Wasn't a good idea to give that to me.
If one had a radiant floor heating system now that was based on propane or oil, can you do a one-to-one, like just get a different heat source and still use the radiant system?
Absolutely. What's that?
So they do make air-to-air heat pumps.
Let me take that. This one's for questions. No. Air to water. There are air to water heat pumps. Everyone that's on the market now, I'm super excited about them coming, and I've been waiting and ready for them for 15 years. There's not one I would put my name on yet. Mitsubishi they promised me 15 years ago that it was going to be in the fall. There's been 15 falls that have gone by. It was supposed to be November, and now they're saying February. So, yep. Yep.
I'm sorry, this question's from about 20 minutes ago, so pardon me. So it's a little out of context now, but I had heat pumps put in my whole house a few months ago. I wish I had heard you in your talk before I did that. But I had about 5 or 6 people come over, quotes, and several of them did as follows. They didn't do all that stuff you said, about the manual J and going in the attic. They came and they said, I already know how big your house is, because they looked at some database. And they said, so I know what capacity heat pump you need. Is that just a complete red flag? I mean, is that ever legitimate to do, or is that just not okay?
I don't know how to do that.
Okay.
You have to go to the house. There are, like I said, I was just at the U.S. Heat Pump Summit the last 2 days, and there's a whole new, generation of young kids that they are going to do a virtual site visit at your house, and they are going to spec out all the equipment and give you a price. They're going to rake the distributors over the coals to get the best price, and then they're going to sub it out to whoever can install it. It's a changing world. But no, I mean, I got my little wooden ruler. I got my booties to put on when I go in your front door. I have 2 tape measures. And I have... Oh. I have 2 laser tape measures, so that I can measure the room, because if one fails, the last thing I want to do is use a tape measure. Yeah, I mean, we now do a 2-person sales team, because there are all of these questions. There are all of these considerations, like whenever I'm in a house, I find myself always talking like we could put one up over here, and I find that I always end up with my back to the wall so I can see where am I throwing the heat? And I do it just like subconsciously, but you got to look indoors, you have to look outdoors, and in the meantime, Shane or Travis or somebody's like doing amply, verifying measurements, looking at the electric panel. We're an hour and 15, maybe an hour and 30 average with 2 people for every quote. I know. I quote against that guy. I don't know who he was, but
Yeah, this is just real quick. I'm not familiar with what goes into the organization of the contractors that Efficiency Maine lists. You say state of the top 25. What 25? They're all arranged in order of what?
number of rebates submitted in the last 4 months.
Okay, so does that correlate with like a reliability or?
You would think.
Okay.
I mean, that tells me that those people are committed to doing heat pumps.
Oh.
You know, I mean,
volume
they do
of
it.
business, you mean?
Well, they obviously do it every day.
Okay. I see.
It doesn't speak for their ethics or morals or reliability. But you have a better
volume.
chance with somebody there that is submitting heat pumps, submitting rebates every day, as opposed to, you know, someone down around 689 that
Right.
has only ever done one heat pump.
But like a really big company could crank them out more, while a small company might be just as good. It's just that they
Well,
don't work that
the
fast.
problem is, I can take all of you guys in my school bus, and I can arrange a training. We'll probably do it right here. I can have somebody come in, and we do a day and a half of training on the safe handling of refrigerant. So we do that Monday and Tuesday morning, and then we all go in town and grab some lunch, and we come back. And, you know, the whole time he's been writing on a whiteboard. After lunch, we take a test. It's a closed book test, but all of the stuff that he covered on in a day and a half is the stuff that's on the test. And he left it all on the whiteboard. Because those trainings are often done by distributors. Well, what do distributors want to do? They want to sell you equipment. So they want you to get your EPA certification. So we all got our tests, everybody passed. We get back in the bus. We drive down to Southborough, Massachusetts to the Mitsubishi Training Center. We spend 2 full days there, which if they took the whole sales pitch out of it, it would really have to be a day. So we leave on day 2. So Monday, Tuesday, we were here. We all have our EPA certificate. 2 days at Mitsubishi, we have our M&P Series Essentials. We come back. We stop at the insurance company, and he sees 20 of us walking in the front door. We all want general liability insurance. There's now 20 new people on Efficiency Maine's list because those are the 3 criteria. What could go wrong? We've never climbed a ladder. We've never used a power tool. We've never installed a heat pump. We have never installed a heat pump.
On that note, thank you again, Scott, so much for coming up. This was really, really covered a lot of ground. Thank you.